Okay.
Hello?
Hello?
Yes, Laura?
Yes. Hi. It's the first time I'm using this.
Well, welcome to Zoom.
Thank you.
I have been meaning to write to you because I do have an exemplar lesson plan for you.
I did find one in the COE lesson plan that is about the science lesson. I think that's the one you were referring to.
It is, yes.
Okay. Okay, good. So I took notes on it.
Okay, very good. I'm just going to shut off the recording for a minute. I'll give you time at certain points to ask questions. Academic language. Language is the primary vehicle for learning, instruction, and overall intellectual development. It is not only a means for communicating information, it is also a vehicle for deepening their understanding of important ideas. Definition. Hello, Amanda, welcome. Academic language is the oral and written language that students need in order to understand, read, listen, think, communicate, listen, speak, write, connect, perform, think, read, write, listen, speak, solve, create. Academic language is necessary for the classroom students to participate in the content. They need it to think, to question, to talk, and to learn. Demonstrating learning with academic language. When we teach a subject or any topic or text within that subject, we must teach the academic vocabulary for dealing with it, not just the words, but also the linguistic processes and patterns for delving deeply into and operating upon that content. There are language demands that teachers need to consider as they plan to support student learning of content, which include language functions, vocabulary, syntax, and discourse. Ideas and structures in science. Although hydrogen is explosive and oxygen supports combustion, a compound of them puts out fires. Unless hydrogen and oxygen form a compound, they are explosive. If hydrogen and oxygen form a compound, they lose their original properties of being explosive and supporting combustion. 3 different ways to say the idea using different structures for academic language in science. Language functions in the EdTPA handbook. And you see the variety of different words that are used in each of the handbooks and the writing that you will have to do and the lessons you'll have to teach. Now, you are all, I believe, special ed.
Yes.
Okay, good. In the special ed handbook, you may choose any of these content areas to use with your focus student. So it's different than elementary. And I've said this a number of times, be very careful when people come and talk to you about their handbook it's probably different than yours. In elementary, the lesson must be based on literacy, with a fourth task about math. In special education, you have 3 tasks, and they are based on the IEP of the student. So that's where you're going to get your learning goal. And then one of these content areas. We do not, even though some schools permit it, we do not do EdTPAs based on behavior plans or behavior management. So at GCU, EdTPAs need to be academic in nature. So you can see the words that are going to come up in your commentaries as you write about whatever subject you are most comfortable teaching. I will just read one, and I'll read the social studies one because that's where I'm certified to teach secondary. Analyze, compare, contrast, construct, describe, evaluate, examine, identify, interpret, justify, locate. And the others are the same for their own content area. If you didn't get it down, don't write furiously. This presentation will be up on the PLN tomorrow, and I will also put up a copy of this PowerPoint. Academic language function. Language used for specific purposes. Inform, to identify information. Report information. Describe information. To solve problems. Define the problem. Represent the problem. Determine the solution. An example from math. A group of students measured the circumference of an exercise ball. Here are their measurements in inches: 42, 46, 45, 47, 43, 46, 46. Find the median, mode, and mean and enter your answers below. Show your work. The median is 46, the mode is 46, the mean is 46. Okay, so notice here that in order for this lesson to work, your students are going to need to know the academic language of math. They'll need to know what a median is, what a mode is, and what a mean is. We also know that we need to be careful because those words can mean something else in a different discipline. For example, if you are building a road, what is a median? Anybody know? It's where you put the flowers in the middle of the road.
Middle.
Or it's where there's a big concrete thing on the highway when they're doing endless repairs. Okay. And mean can mean a lot of things, like meaning. What does it signify? It can also be an expression of dislike. And so we have to be very careful when we teach these words to our students so that they understand that words might be the same, but they're not the same in every context. Another math example. Tom forgot to put his measurement on the list. When the students added Tom's measurement to the list, the mean and median decreased, but the mode stays the same. Which value is most likely to be Tom's measurement? Circle your choice. The answer is 43. Again, you need to understand what the mean is, what the median is, and what decreased means. Academic language functions. Explain why you chose this measurement. The answer can't be 47 or 46 because the mean and the median decreased. So Tom's measurement had to be less than those. Also, it can't be 45 because the mean would have stayed the same. It had to be 43. In other words, what we want to see our students doing is not just understanding academic language, but they need to be able to use academic language to explain their answers, even in math. And so that's what you see here. Creating learning tasks that include academic language. Learning task. A learning task is basically a lesson plan. And it includes activities, discussions, other modes of participation that engage students to develop, practice, and apply skills and knowledge. Learning tasks for segment. Related to a specific learning goal, connected to language function for learning segment. So it is very important, and I've said this before, it's a little bit of an aside, your learning goal must relate to every part of your lesson plan for EdTPA. So whatever your learning goal is, whatever you do, whatever your activities are, whatever your academic language is, needs to be a function of that learning goal. Language demands. Specific ways that academic language is used by students to participate in learning tasks. Reading, writing, listening, and or speaking, demonstrate, perform. Specific ways that academic language is used by students to demonstrate their disciplinary understanding. What do they know? What can they do? What can they use language to demonstrate? So that takes us back to our math example where the student had to use words like mean, median, and mode and decreased in such a way as to describe the answer to the problem. Communication skill, function demands. The communication skill is the purpose or reason for communicating in a learning task. Receptive communication skills, listening, reading text, pictures, or signs. Expressive communication skills, speaking, writing, demonstrating. Representational communication skills, symbols, notation, gestures, facial expressions. One of the things that I hope that you will do as a SPED teacher is to develop your sense of active listening. It is tremendously important not only for the demands of EdTPA, but also for your teaching in general. Active listening includes giving full attention, hearing but not judging, making sure that you are open to hearing what students have to say. It will help you tremendously to begin to do that as soon as your student teaching starts, so that you can choose a focus student with whom you will have a good rapport, a good relationship. So communication demands within a learning task would involve vocabulary, syntax. Syntax is the set of conventions for organizing words, phrases, and symbols together into structures. In other words, how do we put sentences together in English or social studies? How do we write out a formula in science and math? How do we write music? The correct ways to do that is what we call the syntax. Social use of communication is using communication for different purposes, establishing relationships, communicating intent or emotion, or participating in activities, and changing communication to meet the needs of the listener-receiver. Situational expectations are rules and conventions associated with communication in specific situations. In the academic context, this refers to discourse and carries expectations of the use of particular, often subject-specific terms and formats. This can also be applied to us in other ways. For example, when we write professionally should be different than when we write on a text. So when you text your kids or they text you, there is a certain syntax, there is a certain situational expectation of what that text is going to look like, right? Instead of using the word you, Y-O-U, people will just put a U. And things like that. Just like there is a distinction between the way that we speak in a classroom to our students than the way we speak at home or to our friends. It is important to teach our students those distinctions. Supporting classroom students using academic language tools. Sentence frames are tools that can help give students the words and the structures to use as they are initially developing fluency. So here are some possible structures. Since the square root of blank is blank, then blank squared must be blank. The blank is an important symbol for blank because blank. Sounds kind of silly when I read it, doesn't it? In the experiment, the blank acted on the blank and caused a blank. If I fill in a word, do I get to choose to spin the wheel next? Okay, sorry, I couldn't help it. The word was caused by blank, blank, and blank because blank. Discipline-specific vocabulary. Includes words and phrases and symbols that are used within disciplines, including words and phrases with subject-specific meanings that differ from meanings used in everyday life. For example, table, ruler, force, balance. General academic vocabulary used across disciplines. Compare, analyze, evaluate, and subject-specific words defined for use in the discipline. For example, annotate. In English, you add notes and/or comments to a text. usually explaining something and going deeper into the specific meaning, make connections, identify and/or explore key literary elements. So we know about annotate. A lot of people actually have annotated Bibles, right? Bibles that will give you notes on the side about where other things will occur that are similar.
Yes.
Okay? But in science, an annotation is to add brief notes to a diagram or a graph. So they are different. Discourse, structures of written and oral language. How members of the discipline talk, write, and participate in knowledge construction. Discipline specific. Distinctive about features, way of structuring language, text structures. So when we talk about teaching and we talk about education, can somebody think of a word that we use that might not be part of the everyday vocabulary of people? How about differentiation?
Oh, yeah. Scaffolding.
Scaffolding, well, it's used, but not usually in the context that we mean, right? I'll give you another one. Summative.
Oh, yeah.
My computer refuses to believe that summative exists. I try to add it, and it won't do it. I have DragonSpeak, which is a speech-to-text software, and it will not spell it out. It's there's just a thing against summative in the world of the computer.
Manipulatives.
Manipulatives, right?
It always picks up that it's incorrect in spelling or grammatical errors, but on Word, it always comes up that it's not a word.
Right, and of course, the word manipulate or manipulation does not always have a pleasant context.
Right.
So yes. So not only do we use different words in education, some of them would not be considered nice if spoken in other, I'm teaching that child how to use a manipulative. Anyway, so yes, absolutely right. And so discipline-specific words and phrases exist. And one of the things that we do when we learn, especially those of you who are going for a master's degree, when you learn these disciplines, is to learn the language. What does it all mean? Our students need to do the same about the language of their disciplines as well. Common Core text types: argument, expository, informational, narrative. Writing requires something to say, the words to say it, and the structure with which to write it. So let's talk about these for a minute, because there's always some issues with this. One of the ways that you can tell whether a text is one of these or not is by the use of the first person, I. If you're making an argument, may you use the first person in your writing?
Yes.
In my opinion, yes. You should say in my opinion.
Good. Own it. That's good. Because there was some hesitation there. All right. Expository. You are writing about something, a scholarly paper, something that you've learned. Can you use the first person?
Not usually, right?
No is correct. You do not use the first person. Nor, by the way, can you use anecdotal evidence. So if you're writing a paper, I teach a research course at GCU, and if you're writing a paper, don't tell me a story about something that happened in your class. That is anecdotal. I have no evidence for that. You see what I mean?
Yes.
It's like, I don't know, any of you Judge Judy fans?
No.
No. Well, I watch Judge Judy, and it's a highlight of my day. No, it really isn't, but you know. But she always says, don't tell me what someone else told you. I need to see evidence. And that's true of expository. What about informational?
That's true too.
That would also be
Not first person.
not first person. Exactly. Very good. Narrative.
Yes.
Yes.
Could be first person.
Yep.
Yeah.
Narrative can be first person. Very good. So those are the kinds of things that we need to teach to our students in most of the areas that we are doing discourse. You know, if you're going to do a science lab report, that would be informational, right? But you have to talk about what actually happened with the experiment. Does the scientist care how you felt about it? You know, I walked in the room feeling very good because I was wearing my new shoes.
No.
And I sat down to do my experiment. It's like, no, you know, we all think you're a wonderful person, but we really don't care. Okay? And that, but a narrative, that would be exactly what we would care about. Is this helpful at all?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. So remember that when you write papers for whoever your teacher is coming up. Academic language in EdTPA. Pre-service teachers are asked to select one key language function essential for students to learn within the central focus. Identify a key learning task from plans that provide students opportunities to practice using the language function. Language demands. Consider language function and task. Describe the language demands, written or oral, students need to understand or use. Language supports. Describe instructional supports that will help students understand and use language function and additional language demands. Assessments. What formal and informal assessments will provide evidence of students' understanding and fluency. Stay away from vocabulary tests. I would suggest that when you assess your students, give them opportunities to use academic language for a greater purpose, to explain something or to show how to do something, etc. Don't just focus on the vocabulary words, because then you will get dinged for not working within the learning goal. So if your learning goal is using pennies to learn how to count, you can talk about some of the words associated with it, but have the students try to use the academic vocabulary in their explanations rather than standalone vocabulary tests. Everybody understand what I mean?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
EdTPA wants to see the students use the vocabulary themselves. The more they do by themselves, the better score you're going to get. Remember, EdTPA is focused on student learning, not on your teaching. All right. Moving forward, academic language in EdTPA. In the planning task, which is task 1, you will see a prompt 4 on the commentary and in rubric 4. In the assessment task 3, you will see prompt 3, rubric 14. So of the 15 rubrics, there are 2 that expressly deal with academic language in 2 different tasks, which means it's important, right? Evidence of language understanding and use. In task 3, which is the assessment task, explain the extent to which your students were able to use or struggled to use language, selected function, vocabulary, and additional identified language demands from task 1 to develop content understandings. Now, the way that you're going to provide evidence of this is concrete examples from the video clips. And in task 3, you can add an extra 3 minutes of video for this very purpose, okay? And from the student work samples. So again, when you send in your student work samples, do not send in work samples that are simply a mass of red ink. You need to provide work samples where the student writes out a description of something or does something that shows evidence of their use of academic language. Academic language in the commentaries. Okay. This would not necessarily refer to you. You would need to show academic language in the commentary. However, this is based on the academic language requirement in the elementary planning section. So it would not necessarily have to be English language arts development through language. It would be supporting science development through language or social studies, whichever of the content areas you choose. That's what it's going to be about. But the demands are going to be the same, okay? Language demand, language function. Identify one language function essential for students within your central focus. Where are you going to get your central focus from again?
IEP.
Yes, IEP, very good. Identify a key learning task from your plans that provides students with opportunities to practice using the language function identified above. In which lesson does the learning task occur? Give the lesson, the day, and the number. Additional language demands. Given the language function and task identified above, describe the following associated language demands, written or oral, the students need to know and or use. Vocabulary plus at least one of the following: syntax and discourse. Language supports. Refer to your lesson plans and instructional materials as needed in your responses to the prompt. Describe the instructional supports during and prior to the learning task that help students understand and successfully use the language function and additional language identified in the prompts. Compare uses of academic language in commentary. Okay, so here we are going to have 3 different candidates who are going to compare their, this is their answer to the academic language prompt in their commentary. You will see that candidate 1, I read this every time, and I think what I'm going to do is I'll put this up so that you can read it. You will see that this is the least descriptive. Notice in the green, he talks about or she talks about what they do, but it is not deep. Candidate 2 does a better job with this, okay? And we can see that candidate 2 does everything the other candidate does, but also includes things like context clues, a list of strategies. He discusses 2 ELL students and how he or she is going to work with the ELL students to support their learning. Candidate 2 also talks about modeling, annotation, how he finds textual evidence, modeling, etc. Notice all the responses in green are what he has added that makes his commentary better than the other. And candidate 2 continues here. Again, notice how much more this candidate writes. This candidate leaves nothing to inference. And I've said it before. Scorers do not infer. If you don't say it, it is not there. And so you need to be very detailed in this. I will, as I said, put this PowerPoint up on the PLN tomorrow, and so you will be able to compare and see this example of how the student writes the commentary. Using language in commentary. Do not merely repeat prompt or rubric language as your responses to commentary prompts. You must always include examples and evidence of your teaching. Provide specific and concrete examples of strengths and needs from your focus learners' prior written, oral, or demonstrated work that demonstrate and support your assertion. 2 examples in different curricular areas are as follows. Well, we're doing academic. We don't do vocational. When tested at the beginning of the year, Terry could read 24 simple CVC words independently. By January, he was reading 62 words correctly with several self-corrects. He is now working on CVCE words to reach his IEP goal of 75 CVC and CVCE words read correctly by the end of the year. So notice that this is very specific, isn't it? And it gives the numbers, it refers back to the IEP goal, and that's why it is a good example of what to write in the commentary. Tips for using academic language. Highlighting academic language in lesson plans. Develop script for video recordings. Develop script for questioning prompts. Set clear expectations for student responses using academic language. Familiarize yourself with the 4 language demands: language functions, vocabulary, syntax, and discourse. Research and observe master teaching, making notes about the use of academic language. For that last one of the things that I really hope that you will do is during the first few weeks of student teaching, you will not be taking over a class. One of the things you will be doing is observing your mentor teacher. The other thing that you ought to be doing is going around and observing other teachers. If you are in, for example, a segregated special ed resource room or something like that, take some time and go see how some of the content area teachers teach. If you're in an inclusion class, make sure you see how some of the teachers teach who are not going to be co-teaching in your inclusion class. So take the time to see everybody has a different style, and you can adapt or even throw out the things that you are not interested in pursuing as a teacher. But it will give you some ideas about what you could be doing in your own class. Okay. We have time for a few questions. Ask them if you got them. And you can ask about anything.
Yes, for the special ed students, I know we go by their IEP goals to write objectives, but how about if some of them also are ELL students? Do we need to add that extra language objective for them in the EdTPA as well?
I would, yeah.
Yeah.
I would. I mean, it shouldn't, that may end up being what you know, one of the things that you have to deal with. But you do yourself a disservice if you don't add it in, because you may do wonderful things with it and they'll take it into account when they score you.
Okay, good. In New York, there's a lot of ESL children
Yes.
in with special ed.
I would not be surprised.
Yes, so I come into that a lot.
It is interesting to me, and this is just an aside, it is my own opinion, not the opinion of GCU, etc., that sometimes the real issue is the ESL and not a specific learning need.
Yes.
I work primarily with at-risk students, and even though they don't have specific learning disabilities, they are often lumped in with special ed students because the way that you teach them is the same.
Yes.
And so I suspect that may be the same with the ESL students. But once they develop their English language abilities, they will probably test out.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. For student teaching, have you had students in this course that have done their student teaching in their own classroom?
Many times.
Okay.
I did my student teaching in my own classroom.
Okay.
Yes, what you will do in that case is you will have to have a mentor,
Mm-hmm.
but you're probably going to get a mentor anyway.
Yeah, my head teacher who.
That's right. There are very few teachers today that start in a new school that do not have a mentor. And so your mentor is going to function then as your cooperating teacher.
Mm-hmm.
But you'll still be evaluated and the mentor will still need to be there the times when your evaluator from GCU comes in.
Right. Okay.
Other questions?
So I'm doing a double. I'm doing elementary in science and special education. So I'm just wondering how would that work out for me? You said that we need to look at the IEP. So would I be doing special ed one day or one lesson, and would I be doing science for another? How would that work out? Because I'm not only doing special ed.
Right. So here's the thing. You will be, instead of taking one course of 15 weeks, which many of you are going to be taking in special ed, you're going to take two student teaching courses of 8 weeks.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And one of those 8 weeks will be devoted to elementary teaching. And the second one will be devoted to special education.
Oh, all right.
Now,
Okay.
in terms of EdTPA, you only need to do one EdTPA. But you're going to work on it during both of those sessions.
Okay.
So even if you start with elementary education, we're going to want you to start thinking about and working on things like, how am I going to write the commentaries, doing videos, and you're going to have to write some sample commentaries in special education for your teacher, okay, for your instructor.
Okay.
I would strongly suggest that you do the EdTPA for special education rather than the one for elementary, and I'll tell you why. There are a couple reasons. First, in elementary, you have 4 tasks rather than 3. Second, you cannot focus on science in the elementary tasks. The focus of the first 3 tasks has to be on literacy and English.
Okay.
The focus of the 4th task is math.
All right.
In special ed, you may focus on science as your content area.
Okay.
Okay? So also in the EdTPA for elementary, you're going to need to have a group of focus students, 3 or 6 or something like that. In the special education EdTPA, you only need to work with 1 focus student. So the assessments you send in and everything, it's all focused on 1 person.
Okay. Understood.
Okay, does that help?
Yes, it did. Thank you so much.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yes, I have one more. What if you're assigned to a class where the children are nonverbal? Could you use like maybe pictures that they did as evidence that they've learned, or other forms of communication that they've adapted to show that they learn?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You may, if you're in a class like that, be aware that many special education programs now use adaptive technology.
Yes.
So that students can speak through machines. If that's not the case, then you can provide transcriptions of student communication for nonverbal students. But yes, you can use nonverbal students.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. Well, you know, if you have any questions, please let me know. Our marathon week continues. It's kind of like Shark Week on the Discovery Channel. A new one every night. So we will meet again tomorrow night, where we will be talking about something else. And I will see you. I will see you then. I think tomorrow night we're going to be talking about, which is task 1. So I will see you tomorrow evening. Have a wonderful night. And tomorrow 1, we'll talk about lesson planning and LPP.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Have a good night. Contact me if you have any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so that is done.